And we're floating in. Thanks for joining everyone to this week's episode of The Art of Pricing. I'm taking the part of Talia Lockhart, who's our normal host. She's out on vacation this week, but I get to catch up with two good old industry friends, Rick Haskins and Brian Olson. I meant that as in experience, not old in age, young at heart. So we're going about as far as we can in the contiguous U.S. at least. Brian's joining us from up in the Northwest in Cannon Beach, Oregon. And Rick is joining us from the road, but possibly close to the Keys, or I'm not sure how close you are to Tampa.
Yeah, about a couple hours out right now.
All right, he's coming. Well, yeah, if you want to do just a little background, we can kick it off with you, Rick, and just to talk, a minute or two about your experience in the industry and vacation rentals and beyond.
Which personality? Just one of them, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I love to say I got into real estate and vacation rentals on accident. I was born and raised in Key West. Joined the Navy. When I got out of the Navy, I came back home, promised myself I'd open my own business by 30. I did. It was a pool company. And then I was going to lose my biggest client, which was Key West Vacation Rentals, because she was selling a couple things back and forth. But anyway, I ended up buying my biggest client, so I wouldn't lose them. Took Key West Vacation Rentals from 60 to 215 properties. Part of the deal was I had to get my real estate license in order to buy the company, and then obviously in vacation rental market, your happy owners buy more properties. So became very successful in real estate that way. So now I'm running SHX Real Estate and By the Keys. By the Keys has always been my real estate company in the background. SHX is my new venture with Spotswood's companies. So right now I'm the principal broker of SHX Real Estate in Key West.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. I know you're a busy man, so appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. That storm kept us from being too busy, thank goodness. But I'm chasing it up the coast right now to make sure it gets out of Florida.
Get it out of there. Good job. And Brian, thanks for joining us as well. I'd love to hear maybe your story too.
So I got into it like Rick by accident. My wife was the operations manager of a company here in Cannon Beach. We got the opportunity we're told we had the opportunity to purchase that. 4th of July weekend, 2008, I started as the GM slinging propane tanks and trash. Fast forward 14 years later, we went out on our own in 2014 with Beachcomber Vacation Homes. I grew up on the Oregon coast. Like Rick, I was in the Navy, got out, lived in the Midwest for a while, and then came home. And have always wanted to be in business, always been in sales. We got a great partnership with my wife and a friend that Beachcomber's been. Started with 2 properties in 2014 and now have 60. So, and
awesome.
Keep growing. So we're excited to do it.
Oh, congrats. And
you.
I definitely learned a lot over the years from both of you. And so excited to have you here on the show today on Art of Pricing. And what we do each week is really talk about one of the many factors that influence what you can ultimately price your vacation rentals for. And this week's topic, since I'm subbing in for Talia, I can't talk enough about regulations. So we're going to dive a little bit into how those regulations can impact ultimately how you price your rentals. And both of you have experienced probably more than you'd like to on the regulatory front. So maybe, Brian, I might kick it to you first if you want, and just explain a little bit about what is the regulatory landscape in Cannon Beach, Arch Cape, Clatsop County, where you operate.
So right now in our 10-mile square area, 10 miles to the south, a few miles to the north, we manage 6 different licenses for vacation rentals.
Everything. Keep it simple, right?
Yeah, let's keep it simple. Everything from a hotel license that I can rent nightly to a grandfather license. And then the most annoying thing in the world is our 14-day license that only allows us to rent once every 14-day period. So that's where the pricing gets tricky, because really in the summer, where we should have 8 weeks, we only have 4 weeks at kind of minimum. Sometimes we can get better, but it's a typical 4-week summer for a house.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things. It's a market I operated in early in my career as well at Vacasa, and just found it to be exceptionally difficult to even comply with the regulation through the software that was available back then. So we ended up building a lot of custom features that, like,
Yeah,
if this checkout happens on this day, then we can't have anybody in there for 6 days or whatever it was.
right. It's a struggle every day. Um, yeah, and trying to explain to homeowners, and there's always that thing that people are getting in this business to get rich. Well, let me tell you what, Buchanan Beach with the rules, forget about that idea.
Yeah, with the real estate prices and the rules.
Yep, exactly.
Great. And Rick, maybe if you want to give a little landscape on the Keys. I mean, you are based in Key West, which probably is one of the more complicated areas to try to know whether or not you have a legal vacation rental. But maybe, and anything else you want to add around the other markets in the Keys you operate in.
Sounds like, Bob, we have similar rules, right? Because we have the nightly vacation rental license, we have which is like a hotel motel license, and then we have weekly rentals. But those weekly rentals, they're restricted to 26 weeks a year or 175 days a year, and you have to keep track of them separately. Super crazy there. That's probably one of the more difficult ones, but it's better than the worst one, which is the 30-day rentals, where you can only rent once a month. And then they even changed the language from 28 days to 30 days, even though February only has 28. So you just have to have two personalities for 2 days there. That's all. It's easy for me. But so it sounds very, very similar to what you're dealing with there. I think we all deal with similar quirks in different markets, but the ones who can work their way through those and figure out the creative way to get by them and still make the experience good for the guests are the ones who are able to excel.
It's a really good point. I think one of the things I learned is that there's two camps of owners. There's one group that doesn't care about the regulations, and they're going to do everything they can to fly under the radar and do whatever they want. And so they end up avoiding hiring a professional manager for that reason. There's another category that wants to comply and doesn't want to get fined or revoke their license or whatever. And that category looks for a professional manager. So if you can break it down the way you two just did, that's a value add to the owner to understand, okay, I'm working with a manager who knows the rules, staying on top of it. I'm going to feel confident that I'm not going to end up with a huge fine. Because in most of these cases, the owner's ultimately responsible for anything that comes down. In a lot of cases, they try to put responsibility on the manager and the owner, but the owners, at least a lot of the ones that I talked to, were concerned about it falling back on them if there's not a compliance with that. So
it's in Cannon Beach, it's much like room tax. Ultimately, we remit room tax, but the owners are still responsible for it. They're still responsible for their calendars. One of the things that we've got creative with, especially in our 2-week licenses, to maximize revenue, is that when we get those families, grandma and grandpa are coming, they've got 2 sets of kids. They come with 1 set of kids for 1 week, and they really like to have a group in the middle, and then the second set, the second. What we have found is if they're going price conscious, they're good, we can offer them that second week half off.
Yeah. Which
has helped boost our revenue. It sounds like a crazy idea, but it's better than the owner not getting any revenue at all. And they've been really receptive to it.
Very similar for the monthlies, right? And it's all about education, whether you're educating the owner or educating the guest. You have to say to the owner, look, we may do better as renting this as a monthly, especially on those ones where you can only rent 26 weeks a year. The other odd part of that license is if you rent it by the month, that doesn't count against your 175 days or your week. So if you rent it by the month, it doesn't count as a rental. So then we say, look, in the high season months, January, February, March, let's charge this and get monthly rates, and it will be worth it. It may not be the same amount you would have gotten if you rented 4 weeks, but you're not limiting. You can be booked all year long and still make more income, right? Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yes, it's very similar to what we do. We just try to maximize that 2-week period or that summer rental, because in the winter we get so crazy that where it gets really difficult, and we're now going to minimums in even the off season in winter, because we have to block, if a guest is here for 4 days, we have to go backwards and forwards. So if they're there the 4 days in the middle of the month, that may be the only reservation for the whole month. So we really watch pricing and minimums during that time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how both of these end up tying really closely into remarketing campaigns and the book direct movement, where, I mean, if someone, a lot of times the problem with these properties is you end up with a 30-day minimum on a property, you're losing most of the demand because people can't even see it in search results if they're only using Airbnb or VRBO or something. But if you have guests that are coming back to the Keys or to Cannon Beach every year, and you can educate them on, hey, your best value is going to be booking a 2-week stay here because of the way the regulations work. And here's the kind of price per night you can get if you extend your stay, and doing more of that, especially like if you can catch them pre-planning. But I think to your point, Brian, there's also that other side of like figuring out where is that sweet spot where you're going to get enough people to take you up on booking that second week at half price, where it's worth putting it at half price or maybe 40% off or 70% off. Like, how far do you have to go where the number of conversion you get equals the value that makes it worth it for the owner? So
right,
there's some complicated math that you could do on that side, but a lot of it comes down to intuition and,
we
understanding your market. So
our reservation grid is kind of the big thing. We watch it and get out, see what's going on and what reservations are coming. And of course, this last year has been thrown some of those rules out the window, as far as, because booking days and all of that has kind of changed quite a bit. But we seem to have hit the sweet spot. And once you get that way with owners and they understand that, because that's the hard part. You're right. And there's the group that flies under the radar that tries to not do the things the way they're supposed to, and the ones that do. Once you convince those groups that you can get this done for them, they usually come pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely. Or once the first group gets slapped on the wrist or a little worse, then they might change their mind. Like, I know Cannon Beach got quite a bit more aggressive in the last 10, 15 years. Then there was a category of owners that would come to us and say, oh, we've never followed the rules. And we're like, we're going to have to. So I'm sorry.
Yes.
Like you're not going to be able to make the same amount of money just because we're going to comply with regulations. So,
well, I've lost houses and homeowners because we follow the rules, and it's I've told them I'm not losing my house over your willingness to break the rules.
So. Yeah. Well, in Key West, I don't know if you guys shared this over the past year or not, but while the regulations were locked down in Key West, they actually were arresting our guests. Vacation rental owners. They were arresting them. 2 people that own a vacation rental company in Key West were arrested, and they arrested some guests that overstayed their welcome. So they were dead serious here. It wasn't just losing the property. They lose their license and they lose their freedom.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredidible. Wow. A tale of 2 different lands in Florida there, but like from Key West to 30A or something. But and I think this, one of the things that I wanted to cover a little bit was just how this feeds into supply and some potentially supply constraints. I mean, both of you are in markets where I would say demand already exceeds the housing stock that's available there on all fronts. Like, so on vacation rentals specifically, but also in terms of total housing available for people. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts around like, how has that influenced price? And I think, both of you have some good examples where you can see, like in Cannon Beach proper and in Key West proper, what are like ADRs compared to the surrounding areas that may have less restrictions,
In Key West, in most cases, we are, 2 or 3 times higher to be inside Key West proper. I mean, even though there are places like Shark Key that are 4 or 5 miles outside the city and a, much larger, much bigger, much more private, like celebrities want to be there, you're still going to get a higher rate for a little 2-bedroom, 800 square foot condo that's on Duval Street with the Duval Street address, which is, I'm sure, similar, right? If it says 30A on the end of it or one of those premier locations. I mean, I'm from Key West and I love to be in 30A. So it drives price for sure. We can, like, especially right now with sales, with sales being limited, inventory being limited for sales, we can drive the price, justify the price by saying, look, this place is going to make so much money because vacation rental market is out of control right now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess with the Key West, well, maybe we'll come back to this. I'm going to come back to how that correlates to the sales price. But Brian, what have you seen like within Cannon Beach? And then you have a little bit of this like restriction around it, and then no restrictions.
The 14-day license actually helps in ADR.
Mm.
And the reason is there's such a limited inventory that's available. So if you want your week, you're going to pay whatever it takes to get that oceanfront house, you know, in Cannon Beach looking at the rock. The other, probably much like your street in Key West, we have the presidential streets, which you're familiar with, Cliff, in Cannon Beach. It doesn't matter whether you're on the beach or a block away, the presidentials is where people want to be. And because of the 14-day, it drives that price up because of the limited availability.
Now, and
So
you see that you have some hotel units, which I think is always a good strategy in some of these markets where supply is artificially constrained on vacation rental regulations. Do you see a difference where you have maybe a 1-bedroom that's on a 14-day permit versus the hotel suite as compared to when you start getting into the larger homes where you just have no comparable inventory in hotels?
Yeah.
Like, how does that end up?
In that, I have 5 suites that belong to a local brewery that were hotel suites. They are probably our second largest income producer with the 5 of them combined because we can do nightlies on them, but their ADR is less than a 1-bedroom 14-day because we can turn it so often.
Yeah, and this is something we'll see too, where like some of our clients that we work with might see like, oh, Charleston is a good example, like Charleston, South Carolina, where you have pretty heavy constraints on vacation rentals, but there's a lot of hotels and there's a lot of competition amongst hotels in Charleston. So the closer you are to being comparable to a hotel, you don't get that same lift that you would get if you're that 5-bedroom in Charleston that you just can't get in a hotel experience.
Right. And we have one outside of the city that's in the county that sleeps 28. And as
that's a rarity
in this market, Cannon Beach proper, the max we can sleep is, well, now it's going to be 10 because of state regulation. So that house that sleeps 28, our ADR's through the roof because we could get big families back into it.
Yeah, you go down to Lincoln City, well, Rhodes End, like every house sleeps 28. So
right.
Whether it's 1-bedroom or 12.
12, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's led to a whole nother regulatory discussion for another day, but it's been ongoing for 20 years there.
Yeah.
But no, and coming back kind of to your point around those prime locations, Rick. One of the things that I always find interesting from a real estate perspective is whether or not the license is transferable and how that impacts the sales price for a home. I think it's actually, in my view, one of the best arguments for why vacation rental regulations have like these unintended impacts that can be quite consequential on owners, where you see that somebody wins the lottery in Cannon Beach, for example, and the home value might be artificially increased for 5 years, where if you don't win the lottery, then your home value is staying stagnant. So yeah, I'd be curious maybe to start with you, Rick, on that, given how much you're focused on the sales side of it now, and how frequently is that a question an owner has, is like the thinking about the vacation rental value?
Yeah, so it happens every single day, right? Because you have, like, just for one comparison, Duval Square, there probably are half of the units at Duval Square, they're all identical, but half of them are transiently licensed, which is what we call it in Key West, and half of them are not. So you'll see, one unit will come up and it's, the $700,000, and everybody's like, oh, I want that, and can I rent that nightly? You're like, no, that is $700,000 because it rents nightly. If it was a transiently license, it'd be 1.4 million, or 1.3 million, because those make $150,000, $200,000 a year gross. So, that's also what you can do. That's also how it benefits you, though, with vacation rentals, because you can say, look, that one doesn't have a license. That's why this is worth more. And we can, because there's only 10 in this complex, we can pretty much make your price whatever you want. I'm sure you're experiencing that now all over the United States, where you can it's like poker, right? you bet when you have the best hand. Right now we have the best hand. Everybody's coming into Key West. I know. We're like 95%, 99%, some weekends sold out. So you can make your price whatever you want. If you're not making your price high right now, you're not making that money. Therefore, the property's not worth as much. You know?
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And it's one of the things I look at a lot when I'm buying vacation rentals, or now I'm looking at inns more and more, just because vacation rental prices are insane in most markets, you know? So, and inns, there's always been some value add, like on a per unit basis. You can usually get a better deal buying a small inn than you can on a vacation rental. But I'm seeing that being a little bit more pronounced right now. I think a big reason why is that inns did not experience the same lift in average revenue per unit. Even the ones that were really positioned as positioned well to be marketed as a vacation rental didn't go that route. And so you see a lot of these properties that for instance, I purchased one up in Maine recently, and it just shut down for the entire year last year, rather than pivoting towards a vacation rental model, you know. And so it's been interesting to just watch that real estate market. But I'm seeing there's definitely a lot less, fewer bargains out there on the vacation rental side than there used to be. So.
Well, in our market, as you know, Cliff, we have grandfathered licenses, so those guys can rent however they want for as long as they're there. But the minute that property sells, they go back to the 14-day. They're guaranteed. I mean, they'll still have a vacation rental license, but instead of renting nightly, they have to go to the 14-day license, which is a struggle as a property manager when you're trying to explain that to a prospective buyer. I can show you numbers for the last 5 years, but they are not what you're going to see, you know? So that is a struggle.
And that's where those partnerships, I know you partner with realtors in your market, and that becomes such a key piece, is understanding what they're selling to prospective buyers, so that like you don't end up getting like caught with being the bad news person all the time.
Right.
You know? So,
right.
But yeah, it's a tough thing to figure out. And I see this like with both Florida and Oregon, for example, where there are exemptions for short-term rental operators, where sometimes you end up with a bigger disconnect between what's going on in the real estate sales side and the vacation rental management side. And that would be another thing that'd be interesting in your market, Rick, is where those 30-day plus rentals end up being almost exclusively managed by people that do have a broker's license in Florida, where the people that don't end up having to go after pretty aggressively over the inventory they can rent. And so I'm curious like how that might play into what you see in your market, on like in terms of who's managing.
Well, I know you know this because that's how we know each other. But in Key West, there's only a very limited amount of nightly licenses.
Yeah.
Right. So those of us who have been really successful in the vacation rental business, whether it's in the real estate side or the rental side, and have been successful because we're able to take those weeklies or the monthlies and turn them into money makers, or take a long-term rental and make it a monthly rental. Because right now the monthlies in Key West are soaring. Those numbers, you can almost ask whatever you wanted for the monthly rentals. And they're in some cases doing better than the nightlies, just because there's no turnover on net, right? Not on gross. But so it is still, who's selling what. Like, for instance, there's something for sale right now in Key West that somebody wanted to buy. And then when we look at the numbers, we're like, yeah, you're not actually going to make that, because while it is licensed, it's not licensed for 6 units. It's only licensed for 2. So if you want to do this right, you're going to have to drop back or make 2-3 bedroom units or something like that. So, and then you really legally can't even honor the rentals that are in place.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to take a, multi-million-dollar property like that and say, no, it's not going to make what it was. But if you're creative and you have the right, you have the right marketing strategy, like you said, you can turn those big. Realtors have to work with property managers. Property managers have to work with realtors also. And then we say, look, this is the one who's going to make you the most money because they can do this, or they've got this vision, right?
No,
That's kind of what you're asking.
Yeah, and I think it was one of the things I saw, like when we entered the Palm Springs market for Vacasa, where it ended up being a disadvantage that we were not a licensed broker in that market because we couldn't accept those 30-day plus rentals that we could have otherwise gotten like over the summer. And or the thing I ended up going down the road of exploring was like, could we partner with a local broker who doesn't do vacation rentals to execute on that? And there's, it's a market by market strategy. In some markets that doesn't matter as much. I would say like in Cannon Beach, there's less demand. Like during the periods where you would even want a month-long plus rental, there's like more than enough supply, and it's going to be a race to the bottom in terms of price and for that,
Yeah, it's that we don't see the month longs until we get into that December, January, February when they want to come experience. They're thinking about moving to the Oregon coast. Yeah. So let's come stay in the stormiest time, and that's,
and they want to pay $500 a month or something.
Right. And we've got, because it's gotten better, we have got some, it's not as much of a race to the bottom anymore, but a homeowner that's going to get like back to my example, they get 3 days in the middle of January and they pick up $1,500. If I can rent it for $4,000 for the whole month, they're thrilled.
Oh, sure.
So, so we do go back and forth with that. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, we're down to 3 minutes. And so I just wanted to make sure I give enough time for each of you to give any closing thoughts. We go fast and furious on Art of Pricing. We differentiate by not having an hour long, but I thought we packed a lot of good information in here and something for people to think about. It's a strategy that has to be tailored to your market. So Brian, maybe we want to start with you and just like advice you'd have for somebody that's maybe launching in a new market or trying to really get in and understand their regulations and how they can use that to a positive in their business.
I think what you need to do if you're going into a new market, you need to know it inside and out before you get in, because if you're into it 6 months and find out a rule, it's going to bite you in the butt if you didn't know it. The other piece is be involved. If you're not involved in the communities you're in, as far as city government, county government, you don't know what they're throwing down at you next. I was actually on the phone with a guy yesterday that is going with a competitor of mine, but he needed some help. And it's like, hey, by the way, don't forget there's a moratorium coming in the county. He's like, oh crap, my guys didn't know that. So it helps when you know to be knowledgeable in your markets. So you are the expert and it helps you in that planning and marketing.
No, it's great advice. And yeah,
I would agree. And then, you're coming into them, like in Key West, we're probably not coming into any new markets, but what we do have is new regulations popping up all the time. Yep. But it does help to be involved, especially right now, because I think everybody in the vacation rental business is making a lot of money. So owners are tempted to do it themselves. Vacation rental owners are hard to differentiate themselves. But when you're connected to the community because you work with your volunteerism, or you're working with the policemen or the firemen, or you're involved in the community in many other ways as a volunteer, or in the city government. I mean, I ran for mayor, it didn't work out, but maybe next time. But yeah, stay involved in your community, and then that helps people make a decision. And when they ask around about you, then they've heard about you and not in so many bad ways, right? Like Cliff has.
Yeah, I think you just got to go straight to Governor Rick. That's what it was, just too small of an office for you. But no, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Good advice. Mine always is as well, like kind of taking on to Rick's point there, is that find out the biggest issues the city is facing and help with those. And then they'll care about your issues. But it's always one of those things. I see a lot of people wait until they have a problem in vacation rentals and then get involved, and it's usually too late by that point. So, but thank you so much.
Complaining about it doesn't help as much as jumping in and doing something about it, right?
Yeah.
Like you do.
No, and you to a much better degree than I do. I'm always admire, especially with the hurricanes and other things that have gone on in those areas. Like you're literally pulling people out of homes. So it's awesome. But thanks for the great work both of you do. And if you're in Cannon Beach, you have to go to Brian's office and get a beer and a cookie.
Yep. All right. I got beer, root beer, and fresh cookies all the time.
I'm a busy man.
All right. Very good. Thank you both and have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
See you.